Hey there guys, welcome back to my channel. Last time I left you guys off on a bird's eye view of what a ball python is and the type of care that it requires. And today, my lovely guest is my girl Ice. She has a ton of morphs in her, and we're gonna get into that a little bit in today's video. Today's video is a point of view, first time buyers of ball pythons. Now, it can be really easy for ball pythons to be an impulse buy, especially if you see one on Craigslist or a Facebook ad that they're basically giving away their snake. It's really easy to jump on it, and without having the proper equipment for it. So that's the first thing I want to get into. Say you want to get a ball python, you want to responsibly buy one and equip one, so it has a good chance of living up to the 25 years it's able to live. Um, so the first part is getting the proper equipment. Now you can get equipment from anywhere, from your big name brand stores like Petco, PetSmart, Pet Barn, or from places like Walmart, Michael's, which is a handcraft store that's close to where I live. You can get your equipment from any of these places. So one of the very first things you're gonna need is an enclosure. If you're gonna go for a glass enclosure, you might have to visit a fish store, or most likely a pet store that has locking lids, because these guys are escape artists. Even with tubs, they tend to get out. So you got to make sure that the enclosure you're putting them in is properly secured. Now there is another type of enclosure we're going to get to that I don't recommend putting these guys in, that I left out on the first video. So you can get their equipment from anywhere. Um, so what to buy? So let's say you shop around, you find a good store that offers pretty much everything you need. Because if not, then you're probably gonna have to buy these things off of Amazon or another trusted site. So what to buy first off is um, the heat that's gonna come to these guys. Regardless whether you buy glass or plastic tub, these guys want under tank heating. You can buy heat lamps and things like that. However, they're not preferred. A heat mat hooked up to a thermostat is the preferred way to do it, and the most efficient way to do it, and probably a cheaper way to do it too. If you go to like Petco, PetSmart, they're gonna try to sell you like these snake kits that has a glass tank with aspen bedding, aspen, and some heat lamps. Now it's an okay setup except for the aspen. However, you could do better, and probably for a cheaper price as well. Um, so you need a heat mat, and you need that hooked up to a thermostat. Now a thermostat is probably going to be one of the most expensive things in the setup, because you need to buy a reliable one. This is the thing that's going to tell the heat mat to warm up to no more than the 95 degrees or less, or 95 to 92 degrees that you want your hotspot to be at. If you don't have a thermostat, um, the heat mat will probably overheat and burn your snake. Much like putting a frog in boiling in a pot full of water, and you slowly crank up the heat, and the frog won't jump out because it doesn't register that temperature change. A snake is like that too. It won't feel it get so blistering hot, and they will burn themselves. They also will burn themselves on lamps if they're too close down to the to where the heat spot is. So you be careful with that, because that is a situation you don't want to put yourself and your snake in. Avoid heat rocks. Heat rocks are like heat mats. They're something that heats up. Your snake is able to coil around them. However, these things are extremely hard to put a probe on. So these things will get unnecessarily hot and they will burn your snake. People use them for bearded dragons and other things like that. Don't don't get it. It will hurt your snake. So avoid heat rocks altogether. Um, Substrate. Now, in the last video, I went off quite a bit on different types of substrates. Get a coconut fiber one. If your local reptile store carries it, um, get it. Absolutely, it is a great substrate. Whether you use glass or a plastic tub, one of the best. Just be careful when you're hydrating it because when you buy it, it comes in like in a compact block. So you have to add water to it. So when you're hydrating this block, maybe you don't want to use the whole block, so you kind of scrape at it and pull off around half, and then you have to add water to it. Careful you don't add too much. Less is more. Carefully hydrate it until you're able. Feels humid to the touch, but when you squeeze the coconut, it doesn't drip out any water. That's just about right. Um, yeah. So that's the substrate. So the water bowl, nothing fancy. You can get an expensive looking rock water bowl. However, a used deli cup works perfectly fine too. I use deli cups, short deli cups where they sell sour cream. Perfectly normal. They're washed out. There's no glue on it from the label or anything like that. Um, I wash them. I wash them out weekly, so they're perfectly fine. There's no ink uh, leaching into the water, so it's perfectly fine. You can use other types of containers. Um, it's all up to you. Um, and on top of that, and after that, you can go for some enrichment. Now, it's debatable how much enrichment these guys need since they got a reptile brain. Um, However, it's always nice having a little something more in their tank. I mentioned Michael's, which is a local handcraft store that's near me. You can buy things like fake foliage there. Of course, after you have to wash them off before putting them anywhere near your reptile to make sure they don't have any type of chemicals on them. Soapy water and warm soapy water would probably be the best thing to get those any resting chemicals off the foliage. Um, and also, when it comes to enrichment, avoid hollowed out rounds. I know there's hollowed out like cork rounds that are not cork, but bark rounds that are cut in half. Those are okay. However, avoid things like hollowed out logs because these guys can get in there and they might fit it when they're smaller. However, when they start getting bigger or they start taking bigger food items, they might get stuck, and that's a bad situation to put your snake in. Um, so avoid those things, and also things like artificial plastic skulls, a skull, cranium. Avoid those things too. I naturally tend to avoid them because they look super corny. However, some people use them, and they will probably get stuck there too. Um, there are certain highs that are super easy for them to get into. You're able to open them up; they're enclosed, so they feel secure. The snake feels secure, and you're able to just lift them up, lift up the hide without any type of issue. So put all those things together in a very obvious manner. Um, Put down your heat tape, tape down the probe of your thermostat on the heat mat, directly on the heat mat, not inside of your container. Um, Outside, the probe completely resting on the heat mat. Um, Put your tank on top, not on top of the probe, but on top of the mat, and fill it with substrate. Maybe a good half inch of coconut fiber. Put your hide, put your water bowl, Put in your enrichment, whatever it is, whatever fits inside your enclosure, and you're good to go. You do want to have your lights on when it's daytime so the snakes know to rest, and be sure to have them off when it's dark time so they know it's time for them to come out and crawl around and explore. Um, this girl, as compared to Chocolate, the snake from my previous video, you can tell that this girl is a lot more active. She really wants to get into the desk in front of me. Yeah. So after you put it all together, now you're able to buy your snake. And you are absolutely spoiled for choice. Um, from options from buying them, where to buy them from, which type to buy them, which type of snake to buy. I like to think of this like buying a dog. However, with dogs, they suffer from a lot of different health problems. These guys, for the most part, their variety doesn't really impact their health, which is a great thing. Now, there are a couple of morphs or colorations of snakes that it does impact, and we'll talk about that at the very end, since that I believe it's something a new person coming into the community should know. Now, you can buy these guys from a local pet shop. You can buy these guys from a reptile expo, which is places people that breed these guys tend congregate once a couple of years before the shenaniganing of 2020 began. And lastly, you can buy these guys online. Um, there is a reputable website called Morph Market. It's a good website with a lot of big name breeders there. Um, and overall, I think there's a lot more trust there too. Of course, you can look at the individual seller uh, reputation to make a call on whether a particular you want to buy a particular snake from a particular person. Now, before you buy a snake, even if it's something like a classic that has no morphs in it, it's bottom of the barrel, cheap. However, even those guys are awesome pets. Um, you got to ask questions. You have to show some level of interest and who is selling you the animal. That way you can get an idea of the quality of animal you're getting. Snakes, they're very hard to tell whether something's wrong, so you have to inspect. And it's inspect them very well. If you're doing it in store or in an expo, you're able to see them before you buy. You're able to feel them. You're able to hear whether they're wheezing or not, which is a telltale sign of respiratory infection. We're able to stretch them out and feel their vertebrae, make sure they don't have any kinks or a misshaping of the spine. The ribs are fine. They don't have any black spots or bugs crawling all over them, which might be blood-sucking mites. Um, their face is immaculate. They're not drooling. They don't have anything in their eyes. Uh, they're fully shed. Things like that. So you're able to inspect all these things in person. When you're buying online, you're not able to. You're putting your trust solely on the seller. The seller might sell you a sick snake by accident. He might not know it was carrying a certain disease or a certain bug on him when they sold it to you, or sometimes they do, and they just decided to sell it to you. So you're trusting the seller, and that's why seller reputation is big on Morph Market. A lot of those guys probably each seller I've bought from Morph Market, I will probably buy from again, simply because if I had a question or just simply an interest in what they were doing, what projects they were getting into on their morphs, they were more than happy to talk about it. They never shied away from any type of question, from what they feed, which is a question you should ask, to how many snakes they have. Often case, there's somebody I talked to that had hundreds of breeding pairs, which is insane which is a whole nother job. So, what are some of the questions you should ask the person you're planning to buy a snake? And one of those questions is, what is it eating? Now, you might just think a rat or a mouse. And yes, they might be eating either of those things. However, they might be eating African soft-furred rats, which here in the States are very hard to come by. They are on several lists. You're not able to import them. They're illegal in some states because they might be considered an invasive species. So you might not be able to feed your snake some of these things. And if your snake is used to eating an African soft-furred rat, it is extremely difficult for them, or they might decide to come off food altogether when you offer them like a rat or a regular mouse. So that's one of the key questions. If they're eating live rat or live mice, it might be hard for them to switch over to frozen thawed. There's some breeders I know where they work they work the snake to try to get them to eat frozen thawed because that's what most people will try to feed their snakes. Um, so understand that if you're buying a snake that has only eaten live, you might have some issue. You might not have any issue, but you might have some getting these guys to eat frozen thawed. Um, Another question is how frequently does it eat when offered food? Um, which it's very different from how frequently somebody offers it food. I offer food once every 5 days. Does it mean they're gonna eat every 5 days? No. This girl here probably eats um, out of 3 tries, every 3 tries that I try to feed her, she'll eat twice. So that means she eats twice every 15 days, which is around once a week, which is perfectly fine. However, some snakes will not eat that often. They'll eat much less. There are some snakes that will eat every time, and they'll be very piggish. Um, so if you love a snake, you fell in love with it. You need to know how its eating habits are. So when you bring it home and it doesn't eat for 2 weeks, know that it's not, a miss on you. It's not a miss on the breeder either or the person you bought it from. It is simply a miss on the snake that it's not very hungry. There might be underlying issues on why it's not hungry, such as humidity and a type on the husbandry. Um, or it might be just that it's not a hungry snake. Um, One of the other last questions is, what type of enclosure did it have when it was what type of enclosure does it have? It might be a full-grown snake or it might be a hatchling. What type of enclosure does it have? Because if it's going from a tub and it gets very little interaction, very little movement, um, and you're deciding to put this guy in a glass tank, then the snake is, like I mentioned in the first video, gonna be exposed to you a lot more. And these guys are fairly timid and they're fairly shy. So not that might stress them out into not eating. Um, it might stress them out into having a bad shed. That you know, it might freak them out into not wanting to see you at all. And so they're constantly inside their hide when you walk in, which is perfectly fine. However, if you want them to start eating more frequently and you want them to be more comfortable, then you might have to change your approach from a glass to a tub. Now, very rare is the breeder that has glass enclosures. I'm not saying they're not out there. I just haven't seen them or talked to any of them. So if you get a hatchling ball python, they're most likely going to be in a tub. So expect it to maybe be a little stressed. So be sure to add a lot of hides and foliage it can cover behind so it doesn't feel too uncomfortable. Now, I mentioned this a little bit before, but before you buy your snake or if you receive it in the mail, inspect it. Inspect it, inspect it, inspect it. You want to be sure that the animal you're paying for is at tip-top shape, to make sure that the breeder you bought from is somebody you can recommend to somebody else on the internet that has no idea who they are. Um, if you've talked with them quite a bit before, mention that in the review, because I'm pretty sure there's a review page for them. I know there's one for Morph Market. Um, mention that. Mention how friendly they were uh, to first-time buyers too. Um, if you're buying a snake online through Morph Market, they're gonna ship the snake. They might be able to ship it to your door. However, I don't think that's a good idea. I prefer when if I get mine shipped for them to be sent to my hub. That way, to my nearest like USPS hub, not USPS, but FedEx. FedEx is the one that handles the shipping for live reptiles. My nearest FedEx hub. Um, and it stays there because if I get it shipped to my door, that means it's going to be inside of a van, bounced around throughout most of the day. I might not be home when they drop the box off, um, and it might get sent back to the hub. So I prefer it be sent to the hub. I go early morning to pick it up because it's usually 1 day shipping with these guys. So that adds on to the price if you're trying to get it online. Um, however, it's very fast. I've never had an issue with it. Um, of course, through the thousands of times reptiles have been shipped, I'm pretty sure there have been a couple of accidents, but I'm counting my blessings that nothing's happened so far. Um, now, if you're buying online, there is one major advantage to that, and that is morph availability. Um, if you're going for a classic ball python, you can probably go to any local reptile store in your area. You can probably find a classic, or sometimes it might even offer a variety of different types of morphs. Um, but if you're looking to breed, or you're looking for a particular type or a particular looking type of snake, or if you did a Google search and you found a particular morph you like, you could probably find it on Morph Market, morphmarket.com. Um, and it's great. Uh, Beautiful looking snakes. This gal here is a leopard nuclear blast het clown. Now, that sounds like gibberish. Sounds like random names. However, that's what she's ID'd as. That's what she was sold to me as. And the seller might have missed a couple of morphs, or he might have added a couple that aren't really in there. However, this girl has a lot in her. And if the seller accidentally mis-ID'd her, I'm sure to let him know. Maybe he can cut me a deal on another snake he has that I want to buy. Um, but when you're buying these guys online or anywhere, it's best guess, especially with an animal that's has a lot of things layered on her genetically, genetic wise, as her. So if she's missing a couple of things here and there, it's fine. However, I've seen enough these ball pythons to see a couple of genes in her that I was aiming for, which is leopard. She has thicker polka dots around her body. She's really light. She's really yellow. But she has these polka dotted patterns. She has fire. She has butter. She has all these different morphs I'm aiming for in my breeding projects. And as long as she has those couple, 2 or 3 morphs out of the 9 or 10 she has, I'm perfectly content. Um, which is awesome. However, this gal costs a pretty penny compared to what a classic ball python costs. Online, they cost around $30 to $40 a normal, plus shipping, which is usually $50 to $60. So it's around $100 for a normal. This gal cost me around $900 plus shipping. So she's pricey, but she's worth it. Because I'm gonna breed her and I'm gonna love her, and she looks absolutely wonderful, and I love pulling her out. Which is great. However, there are some morphs that you gotta look out for. And it's things like spider of the spider complex is what it's called. And there's several different types of morphs that are inside this complex or group of genes. So it's spider, um, Woma, hidden gene Woma, champagne, super sable, super spot nose, and maybe others. If I miss any, put them down below the comment section. But these morphs and these morphs sometimes generate neurological problems. See, with this snake, it's perfectly orientated. It knows up and down. It's moving right. And if you flip her upside down, or you stress her out like this, she knows up and down, and her head's pretty orientated. You know, her head's always, on point, even though she's upside down right here. Um, s- Snakes inside the spider complex, they'll corkscrew. They won't be able to have a proper sense of balance. I kind of compare it to being extremely drunk and walking home or running home. They're tumbly and they corkscrew, and sometimes they look up and then they start twisting. Um, and it's a neurological quirk or disease, whatever you want to call it. This is a topic that's talked a lot about in the community. So if you're barely coming into ball pythons, um, look out for that. So spiders and this spider complex is pretty shunned. The spider morph, mostly because it's a really attractive morph. If you don't know anything about it and you're barely getting into it and you see it at like a pet store, you're probably tempted to get it because just looks so beautiful with something like a pastel added in. Makes a bumblebee. One of my favorite looking snakes. However, I decided not to get into the spider complex. So out of the 7 snakes I have that have, different, all kinds of different genes in them, uh, the genes in the spider complex are not present in any of them. Now, one of them does have a spot nose. However, it's the super spot nose that has the neurological quirks, um, which is a little different, which is something we can talk about later. So as long as you look out, when you're buying a snake online, it might not say spider. It might say bumblebee or spinner or gray matter or all these different types of names. If you ask the seller, does this snake have, any of these spider complex genes in it? They'll tell you yes or no. Um, because they're going to increase the price of the animal if any of these genes are in there, simply because from a breeder's perspective they're worth more because it's an extra layer of genetics added on, even though it has this neurological quirk to it. All right, so you got your tank set up. You're looking through. Uh, you're looking through your store, local stores. Uh, Maybe an expo opened up after the shenaniganing of 2020, and you're able to go to a reptile expo and ask a lot of questions and be engrossed in the reptile community. Or maybe you decided to visit a place like Morph Market or a Fauna Classifieds, which is like a eBay type thing, or Craigslist type thing. I really don't recommend for new people simply because you're not sure who you're buying things from. Stick with Morph Market. Um, you find your snake, you're bringing it home or it's being shipped, and you have it in your hands. And now it's very important you put this guy in its enclosure and you leave it alone for at least a day. Don't offer it food for at least 3. Um, First, I would offer it frozen thawed rat. If it takes, you have nothing to worry about. It'll probably take again, which is perfect. If it doesn't take, then you might have to start offering it live prey, like I would offer a live winged rat, which won't put up much of a fight. Um, and then if it takes, slowly transition it to frozen thawed. Um, and then we can talk about food transitioning in another video. Um, but you offer food after 3 days, and then after those 3 days, if it does take, leave it alone for I think 48 hours, at least 2 days. So to around towards the end of the week, you're able to pick them up and hold them like this. Be careful you don't stress out your snake. Make sure your room isn't too cold. Make sure the lights aren't in its eyes. And be careful how you approach the snake if it's a young hatchling, because young hatchling snakes tend to nip. They will bite, defensive strike, and as a new owner, that might scare you. It doesn't mean it hates you. It just means it's scared of you, and it doesn't trust you yet. So build up that trust. Approach it from the back, and pick it up. It might snap at you while it's in your hand. Be sure to keep its face away from your face. Um, and just overall enjoy the animal. Alright, if you have any questions, this turned out to be a fairly long, lengthy video. But if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I plan to get into a little more exotic things other than ball pythons. For example, I really like the Europlatus, or the leaf-tailed geckos. I do like some of the Australian geckos too. Snakes, king snakes are an absolute beautiful variety of snakes as well. Um, there's the reptile community is big. The choice of pets is larger. Um, but gotta make sure that you're responsible for all of that, okay? Alright, and have a good day. Catch you guys on the fly.